The tech battle between China and America is heating up, and it's getting intense. Both countries are investing billions of dollars into their domestic tech industries. But there can only be one winner in this race. So the question is, who will it be? Will it be the USA or will it be China? We will answer this question by breaking down 8 different categories between China and the United States to see which country is winning in each category. Let's get started. Number 1. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the future, and both China and the USA know this very well. This is why China and the United States have been going all out when it comes to AI. The US has made great strides in artificial intelligence thanks to big companies like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and many others. Companies like these have received billions of dollars in investments to grow and expand their AI operations. On the Chinese side, we have giants like Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent who have also received massive investments from the Chinese government to dominate the AI space. Even though the US was the birthplace of AI, many experts believe that China will surpass the US when it comes to AI soon. And the reason for this is simple. It is because China has more data and more people working on AI than any other nation on Earth. There are over 1 billion people in China who are using AI-powered devices every single day. And let's not forget about the fact that China is also building the infrastructure for 6G, which will allow even more people to use AI and push the development of AI forward. Because of all of these factors, we must give this round to China. However, it's important to note that the US is still a major player when it comes to AI. And don't forget that some of the smartest minds in the world are working on AI in the US right now. So it's possible that the US could make a comeback and dominate AI in the future. No. 2. High-speed rail. When it comes to high-speed rail, China is in a league of its own. In fact, China is the country with the largest high-speed rail network in the entire world. There are over 38,000 kilometers of high-speed rail lines in China. That's over double the size of the second largest high-speed rail network in the world, which is Japan's network. China's high-speed rail network is so large that it even connects cities within Tibet, something that no other country has ever done before. It would take nearly 40 hours to ride the entire network, as there are over 10,000 daily departures across China. Also, China is not stopping anytime soon. They are currently building new high-speed rail lines that will connect even more parts of the country. For this reason, China clearly wins this round. No. 3. Space exploration. Speaking of going places, let's talk about space exploration. China has made incredible progress in the space industry in recent years. China became the 3rd nation to independently send humans into space after Russia and the United States. And China has also sent rovers to the Moon and Mars. China also built the Beidou satellite navigation system, which is similar to America's GPS system. And China has plans to launch the Tianwen 10th, which will be the first crewed mission to Mars. And China is also planning to build a base on the Moon. The US is still the most dominant space nation on Earth. NASA continues to do incredible things, and the US private space industry is growing at a rapid pace. But China is catching up fast, and we should not underestimate what China can achieve in the space industry. For this reason, we have to give this round to the US. Both countries are doing great things in the space industry. But if we had to choose a winner, it would have to be the US. No. 4. Quantum computing. Quantum computing is another field where China and the US are going head-to-head. It's still early days for quantum computing, but it's already clear that the US and China are the 2 biggest investors in the space. In 2020, the US had 27% of the quantum computing market, while China had 22%. The US also has the most quantum computing patents with 35% of all patents. However, China is quickly catching up in the quantum computing space. In 2021, China announced that it had created the world's first quantum computing application-specific integrated circuit. And in 2022, China launched the world's first quantum satellite into space. China is also investing heavily in quantum computing education. In fact, China has set a goal to have 1 million people working in the quantum computing industry by 2030. This is a clear indication that China is serious about becoming a world leader in quantum computing. At the end of the day, the US and China are the two biggest players in the quantum computing space. However, the US has a bigger lead than they did just a few years ago, and it seems that the US is moving faster than China when it comes to quantum computing. For this reason, we have to give this round to the US. Number 5. Semiconductors. Semiconductors are extremely important for any country. In fact, semiconductors are often referred to as the new oil. Both China and the USA know how important semiconductors are, which is why both countries have been fighting hard to become the best semiconductor nation on Earth. For a long time, the US has dominated the semiconductor industry. In fact, the US has been the dominant player in the semiconductor industry for decades. But China is quickly catching up. In 2020, China produced 14% of the world's semiconductors. But by 2030, China is on track to produce 50% of the world's semiconductors. As you can see, China is making huge strides in the semiconductor industry. But the US is still the dominant player in the semiconductor space. The US produces 30% of the world's semiconductors. Also, the US has the most advanced chip-making technology. In fact, the US is the only country on Earth that can make 3-nanometer chips right now. For this reason, we have to give this round to the US. No. 6. Internet and mobile users. The internet and mobile users are important because it shows the level of technology adoption of a country. If people do not have access to the internet or mobile phones, then that country's tech sector will not be as developed. The US has 91.1% of its population with internet access, which is the highest rate of any developed country. However, China is catching up fast. 90.4% of China's population has access to the internet. That's only a 0.7% difference. When it comes to mobile phone usage, the US has a 96% adoption rate while China has a 96.4% adoption rate. As you can see, both countries are very close when it comes to internet and mobile users. So we will call this one a draw. Number 7. Renewable energy. Renewable energy is another important factor to consider. The world is moving away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy. The US and China are the two biggest investors in renewable energy. The US invests $40.3 billion per year into renewable energy, while China invests $144 billion per year. Clearly, China is investing way more than the US when it comes to renewable energy. When it comes to results, the US generates 11.7% of its electricity from renewable sources, while China generates 16.5% of its electricity from renewable sources. As you can see, China is doing better than the US when it comes to renewable energy. So China clearly wins this round. Number 8. Electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are another important factor to consider. More and more car makers are switching to making electric vehicles as governments around the world are phasing out gas-powered cars. China and the US are the two biggest markets for electric vehicles. In 2021, China sold 3.3 million electric vehicles, while the US sold 630,000 electric vehicles. So the US did sell more electric vehicles than China in 2021. But it's important to note that China makes up for this by producing the majority of the electric vehicles that are sold worldwide. In fact, 60% of all electric vehicles sold in 2021 were made in China. Another important stat to note is that China is home to 5 of the top 10 electric vehicle brands in the world. The US only has Tesla in the top 10. In recent years, American car makers have been making moves to catch up to China, but it's still too early to say whether or not they will be able to do so. So for now, we have to give this round to China. Who wins the tech race? Now that we have looked at 8 different categories between China and the USA, it's time to choose a winner. The US clearly dominates in the following categories: artificial intelligence, high-speed rail, space exploration, quantum computing, and semiconductors, while China dominates in the following categories: internet and mobile users, renewable energy, and electric vehicles. The US clearly has an advantage over China when it comes to dominating the global tech industry. However, China is quickly catching up, and we should not underestimate the progress that China is making. In recent years, China has been making great strides in many different areas of technology, and it's clear that China is a major player in the global tech industry. China is a country of over 1.4 billion people with a rapidly growing economy. This gives China a huge advantage over the US when it comes to developing new technologies. China also has a highly educated workforce with many talented engineers and scientists. This gives China another advantage over the US. The US is still the most dominant country in the world when it comes to technology. But China is quickly catching up, and we will see what happens in the next few years. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.